And now let me, or help me, welcome Dr. Pirie.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased that the language of this conference is English, because I speak no Czech, but I do have the advantage that I speak extraordinarily good English. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about the Adam Smith Institute, but before I do, I want to make it clear that I will speak briefly and then take questions. I will take questions on any subject. When I taught philosophy and logic at Hillsdale in the United States, if I finished my class early, I would always tell the class I will take questions on any subject, not just the subjects I have been covering, and the same applies here. One student during questions asked me what was my favorite game, and I said it's called Guess Who, and he said, how do you play it? I said, well, you take two Scots people in a room with a bottle of malt whiskey, and they drink the whiskey, and then one of them goes out and knocks at the door, and the other one has to guess which of them it is. So, yes, quite. The Adam Smith Institute is, of course, a public policy research institute, think tank, and we have specialized in changing public policy. Our aim has not been principally to educate about liberty, free market economics. It has been to produce policies that will achieve those things in practice. So we have developed ways of producing policies which are practical for legislators to implement. And we take it, you can take it as read, that we support the principles of liberty, free markets, individual choice, enterprise, opportunity, right. But it's all very well to stand up and say, I support all of those, but how do you actually get them done? How do you change the world? And you change the world by producing policies that legislators will be enabled to enact. So instead of saying, there are so many things we'd like to do, but most of them are impractical, we say, how can you make them practical? And to do that, you must identify the opposition to what you are proposing, the interest groups which think they will lose if your reforms are put through, and find ways of softening their opposition. Sometimes the phrase buying them off comes up. The classic example from history was the state housing in Britain when Margaret Thatcher took office. 35% of people in Britain, more than 1 in 3, lived in houses that were owned by the state, and they paid rents that were lower than the market rent. They were a political constituency, and any party which tried to raise the rents would generally get fewer votes than parties which kept the rents below market rates. And Margaret Thatcher's government introduced the policy of outbidding that interest by allowing them to buy those houses at below market rates. So if they'd lived in the house for 2 years, they had a discount of 20% on the market price, and it went up to 50% if they'd lived there longer. And so now those people, instead of saying, well, if I vote for a conservative government, they're going to put up the rents, they now had to say, well, if I vote for a conservative government, I'll get the chance to buy my house at below its market value. And of course, once they have bought the house, there are no more subsidized rents. The annual subsidy, which it cost, is now gone. There's no rent at all, that they're on their own. And this was, of course, famously successful. But it does, what I'm telling you that now is that it is indicative of a general policy of identifying an interest group and devising a policy that circumvents that opposition, either by presenting them with something more attractive or by building in measures that satisfy their concerns. The Adam Smith Institute has done this for many years. It's what we do. We put out publications, we hold conferences. We spend at least half of our time on young people. We are speaking in schools and universities, holding conferences. We have a group called The Next Generation, which meets on the first Tuesday of every month for lots of wine and a 10-minute speech. If any of you are in London on the first Tuesday of the month, look in at the offices of the Adam Smith Institute, and you'll meet people like yourself. You can talk to and listen to a 10-minute speech. My theme for today is, of course, the prospects for liberty. Given that the world is changing very quickly, indeed at a faster rate, which of these changes are likely to be favorable to liberty, and which of them might threaten it? Well, I've divided them into groups. Some are good, some are bad, some are both. For example, technology is both good and bad. It increases the ability of governments to spy on their citizens and through that perhaps to control them. But it also provides You even have louder rain here in the Czech Republic. It also provides the means for people to elude and evade the prying eyes of government. Fundamentally, if Facebook spies on me in order to be able to sell me more products, I don't mind that at all. If the government spies on me in order to control me, I do mind. So it's a question of who is using the technology and for what purpose. There are things like Bitcoin, for example, which allows me to pay in an untraceable way. There are programs like Tor, which allow people to surf the internet without being detected. And if students in Iran want to look at sites from the West, things like Tor enable them to do so in ways that do not get them into trouble with the authorities. I have an obvious question here. Can I be heard at the back? Tom Palmer, can I be heard at the back of the room? Raise a hand if I can. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. I would also say about technology that it offers all of us more choices and more personal decisions that we can customize to our own lifestyles. Am I close enough to the microphone? Okay. Right. Wow. I'm having to compete with the forces of nature here. I have just bought a new car. It's going to be delivered next month. It has taken 3 months to deliver this car because it is being made to my specifications. When Henry Ford introduced the Model T Ford, all of them were identical. Each one coming off the production line was absolutely identical to every other one. You can have any color you like as long as it's black, he said. When I receive my Tesla Model S next month, it will be completely different from any other car coming off the production line. I have customized all of my choices and selections into it, and modern technology has designated my car. I'm the one that has the grey panels here, and I'm the one that has the sound system. And when it comes off the production line, it will be different from every other Tesla Model S that comes off that line. So modern technology enables me to customize products for my lifestyle. Instead of having to take a standard one and fit my lifestyle to it, I can now customize it to fit around me instead of me having to fit around it. This is how modern technology does enable us to exercise more choices. So the first example I give is technology, which works both ways. The second is globalization. It is now easier for people to move across frontiers to live, people to move and live and work in another country. This morning I was with a friend of mine from London who is now living and working in Prague. It is partly modern technology that makes it easier for people to do this, but mostly it's just the general trend for globalization. And it's a very good thing if we can move between jurisdictions, because then people can shop around. One thing governments learn in the modern world is that talent is mobile. When your productive wealth depended on factories, it is very difficult to move a factory from one country to another. When your productive wealth depends on intellectual talent and ability, it is very easy to move a person from one country to another. Talent is mobile, and therefore there is increasingly tax competition between nations. They try to make themselves more attractive to the brightest and best people. Now, this is a very good thing for liberty, because low tax regimes mean people have more of their own money to spend in ways that they want, instead of the way that governments prefer to spend it. So I take it that globalization in that sense helps liberty. At the Institute of Economic Affairs, which is one of our sister organizations in Britain, one of their leading scholars, Razin Saleh, some of you may have heard of him already, his books, he's now moved to Singapore, where he's enjoying a much lower tax regime and a much lower regulatory regime. So we have the ability these days to move across frontiers and take our talent with us. Globalization also means that the world is our supermarket. We can fill our basket with goods from all over the world quite happily. It has a downside in that many governments are now trying to form supranational organizations, reaching supranational agreements in order to try and limit our choices. What they don't want is us enjoying the advantages of globalization. If we can all move to low-tax jurisdictions, then no government will be able, with impunity, to have a high tax regime, because all its talented people will move away. Now, we would like that government to recognize the fact and to have a low tax regime. Now, the government would prefer to get together with other governments and make an agreement that no government will have a low tax regime. So that's one of the things we have to work at over the next few years. My third example of the things working for liberty is growth. And brilliantly, this has been helped by the financial crisis. I see the skies above do not approve of what I am saying and are trying to drown me out, but I will continue. The financial crisis has made us all more aware of the need for growth and for the policies that encourage it. Everyone is now looking at the stagnant economies in the Eurozone. Everyone is looking at the economies which have managed to lift themselves up after the financial crisis and wondering how they can do it themselves. Well, because of modern developments, it has never been easier to start up a new company, to start up a new business. The type of businesses started these days, a lot of them are service industries, a lot of them are high-tech, internet-type businesses, and they don't need very much capital. And even if you do need capital, there are new ways of raising it that are easier than ever before, crowdfunding and things like this. So for people starting up businesses, really, the world has never been easier than it is now. We hired one of Britain's leading polling agencies last year, YouGov, to conduct a survey about what young people think about their prospects. And surprisingly, the highest single career goal was owning and running my own business. And that was something like, it wasn't a majority, but it was, I think, 48% for women, 47% for men. Girls, a higher proportion of girls wanted to own and run their own business than did boys. But both of them were very much higher than any other career goal. A generation ago, when that question was asked, the highest answer was public service. They wanted to become bureaucrats. Now they want to become entrepreneurs. Now that change has to be a good one for people who advocate free markets and free choices. So. The crisis has done one other thing. It has also made people more aware of the merits of competition. People are now aware that big business can abuse its position by getting together with government or with other firms in the field. We now see competition is destroying firms. Should I pause for 5 minutes? Can people hear over this? Yes? I'm going to take a brief time out for a couple of minutes until the intensive noise. Is that okay? Is that what, people used to think that the big businesses that dominated the economy were there forever. And it's the creative destruction of competition that has revised that opinion. People are now much more ready to accept competition as something which introduces new products, new processes. We all thought, when we were children, that Kodak would always be there dominating the photographic industry. Kodak have gone broke, and they went broke because digital technology supplanted what they did. We all of us, I imagine, thought that taxis would always be the same as they had been. But an idea called Uber came along, and in many cities across the world, it's changing the way taxis work. And many people are embracing this fact that new things supplant the old, that there is a kind of churn, and it's not simply companies that dominate the market forever. Always there are new innovators. It's what is called creative destruction. And more people now recognize that this is a good thing than did before. So that is one of the benefits of the financial crisis. My fourth example is a tendency to have things done privately that people used to assume had to be done by the state. Last week, NASA awarded contracts to SpaceX and Boeing to provide manned vehicles for its astronauts. NASA used to do this itself, and now SpaceX is an entirely private company founded by Elon Musk, who also made that new car that I've just bought. And people no longer assume that space travel has to be a big thing done by governments. We in Britain, of course, I think we hold the record in this, I'm pretty sure. When Margaret Thatcher took office, the government in Britain, well, we maybe don't hold the record because I think the communist states of Central and Eastern Europe probably outdid us. But under the Thatcher government, when she took office, the government made all of the automobiles, it made the trucks, it made the airplanes, it made all of the ships. Government owned and ran the coal industry, the gas industry. It owned and ran the oil industry. It ran the electricity. It ran the railroads. It owned the airports. It ran the state airline. It ran the state ferry services. It ran state hotels even. It didn't have a monopoly of state hotels. The government ran the coal mines. The government, most of the things that happen in the economy were done by the state. And in a very few years, the program of transferring this to the private sector, all of those that I've mentioned were very rapidly, in the space of about 20 years, transformed into profitable private enterprise industries. It was done largely by the method that I said at the very beginning, by identifying the interest groups and taking them on board. So when the state telephone service was privatized, anyone who worked in the telephone industry was offered, if they bought 200 shares, they'd be given another 200 shares free. The unions told them to resist this privatization, and I think 94% of the workers decided to take the shares. It's a question of identifying their interest and assuaging it, bringing them on board, or if you like, buying them off. And it was an extraordinarily successful program, and I think has proved an example to other countries. You can take all these state industries and you can privatize. And we recently privatized our mail service, and I'm sure that will be another thumping success. People criticized at the time, oh, it was sold off too cheaply. How do you know? It's never been private. How do you know what it's worth? It's impossible to say. You put it into the market and you see what people will pay for the shares. Fine. They were prepared to pay more, but on the other hand, we still owned 35% of it, and when we sell that 35%, we'll get the money back that we didn't make the first time. So it doesn't really matter. The main thing is not to make money out of it, it's to create a viable private enterprise business. Now, my fifth example, and this is the one that concerns you all, it is the attitude of young people today. The Economist magazine last year ran a piece pointing out that young people becoming libertarian was one of the most notable political trends. And it was quite a good piece, and it was quite accurate. We've done surveys with Mori, that's an opinion poll agency, and with YouGov. And they found that young people are naturally more tolerant. They're more tolerant of attitudes to sexual morality. They're very much more liberal than their parents were. More young people have friends who belong to a different race, different religion, have a different sexuality, and they're completely laid back about it. Now, this is a good thing for liberty in the future. They're quite prepared to accept alternative lifestyle choices. My sixth example, I suppose, it's a slightly strange one here. It's the fact that the ease and cost of travel, it's easier to travel, and it's less costly than it's ever been. It doesn't just mean that you can go and live and work in another country. It means that young people regularly now go and visit other countries, and in visiting other countries, they see them living by different values, and they begin to accept the fact that there are different lifestyles, and this again fosters tolerance. Social media makes it harder for those in power to hide what they're doing. If they want things hushed up, you bet your life someone on Twitter or Facebook will blow the gaff on it, and it'll all be out there in the public domain. I have a friend in Britain who goes by the name of Guido Fawkes. It's a kind of sort of almost an anarchist website in which he delights in exposing everything that everyone else doesn't want to be exposed. It's not on the scale of WikiLeaks. No, this is just the skullduggery that goes on in Parliament by those in powers and ministers. And it's compulsive reading. Every journalist I know tunes into it every morning and reads the latest. And if you're in government and trying to hide something, forget it, because Guido Fawkes will have it up there. You note, by the way, that in this, I take quite a broad view of liberty. It's not just the ability to express political attitudes, political discontent. It's not just the ability to live alternative lifestyles. It is also the ability to live lifestyles enriched by new products and new processes. These give more choices. No, it isn't liberty, but a woman today who does not have to spend 30 hours a week doing housework because there are vacuum cleaners and washing machines and things like that, has undoubtedly access to more life choices than her predecessors did a generation ago. And that, I take, is a good thing that we libertarians should take on board. It's not just political liberty. It's also the extension of choices in other areas that enriches people's lives and enables them to put their own stamp upon the things they do. Okay. My sixth example of the things that aid liberty is the rejection of the idea that we all have to live more simply. 10 years ago, this was dominant. Environmentalist groups said, oh, we're ruining the planet, we're pumping carbon into the air, there'll be nothing left for our children, we're all going to have to live more simply. It's a profoundly conservative idea. They look back to when life was slower, when people knew everyone in their area, and they sort of think that life was less complex, and now it's all so fast-paced and globalized. And fundamentally, the notion that we should all have to live more simply was gaining enormous traction. But the financial crisis, I think, God bless the financial crisis, it has sent that one up to the back foot. And we were being told we must all buy food grown locally, we must all travel less, we must all put on woolly clothes when it gets cold instead of turning up our central heating. But fortunately, technology has come to the rescue again, and fracking for shale gas has given us reserves of at least 200 years of supply. No longer people talk about fossil fuels running out. They're not. And shale gas, of course, enables for every coal power station replaced by a gas power station, it puts out 50% less carbon and emission. So we don't hear so much talk of we've all got to live more simply. Indeed, now the talk is largely from our side. It's people like Matt Ridley and others. We don't have to live more simply. We have to live more cleverly. We have to apply our technology and ingenuity in order to be able to continue doing what we want to do in ways that leave a smaller footprint on the planet. And it's a very good thing for liberty if we all are able to do what we want to do and don't have to pick up the tab at the end of it. Well, finally, amidst all the good news, what is the bad news? Well, I'm afraid the bad news is public opinion. It's the public out there. It's the people that are the bad news, and we've got to do something about it. The problem is that ordinary people, everyday people, now on the whole think ill of business, and especially big business and especially bankers. They are held to be selfish, indifferent to ordinary people, as long as they make money. It is assumed these are greedy bad guys, and it needs government to control them. Well, this, of course, is not capitalism, it's not free markets. This is crony capitalism that people are objecting to. And it's part of our job to explain the difference between what free markets are and should be and what crony capitalism has done in practice by getting into bed with government. And to do that, we have to campaign constantly, both in the media, in think tanks, in academia, and on the political stage as well. This is your job, to go out there and win that battle, to explain that business is in fact about cooperation to provide people with goods and services that they want, and basically that it's better for the future if business prospers. It's up to you to go out and win that battle, to win it for liberty. My job is a much simpler one. It is to encourage you to do it and to try to help you win that battle. I'll take questions.